Hello, everyone. Local 5 Digital Manager Josh Rose here. We have a digital exclusive behind-the-scenes look on a story our own Justin Razavi worked on, The Snake Whisperer.
Yeah, Josh, I personally think this is a very interesting story. It's something I was passionate about. I think most of our viewers would find it interesting. We met Steve Keller, they call him the Snake Whisperer. He is a snake handler. He adopts snakes that people don't want. He also travels around and does these educational programs on snakes. And occasionally he'll get called in to do like a snake rescue. Some of our viewers may remember back in August, he removed a python from a woman's SUV out in Omro, so some of you guys probably remember that. But I wanted to meet him. I heard about him in August when we originally did that story, and I said, this is a really interesting guy. I didn't know that anybody in our area did stuff like that. So
and that led you to doing that story?
Yeah, I talked to our news director, Kevin, and Kevin said, Justin, let's set up an interview. Let's go meet him. Let's see what this guy's all about. And so that's how we did the story.
Interesting. And when you did it, when you spoke to him, what kind of things did you learn?
Well, Steve is a very interesting guy. He's a very unique guy, and I think it's just snakes are one of people's biggest fears. I would say for me, before this story, snakes were probably my #1 fear.
Sure.
And Steve is the exact opposite of that. He's loves snakes. He seeks snakes out, and his mission is to make people to eliminate that fear of snakes. Steve says that snakes are actually gentle animals, but they have a PR problem. That's how he puts it, and it's convincing.
PR problem? How do they have a PR problem? Where did that begin?
He says that if you read any books, any movies about snakes, they're always depicted as a bad guy. He says it starts with the Bible, which I thought about it as kind of like, it's kind of right.
That's funny. I guess so.
The snake is the bad guy at the beginning of the Bible, and it just continues. Most movies, books depict the snakes as being the bad guy. And when I went there and met Steve, saw some of the snakes, held a few of them.
I put a few of the snakes.
I put a 7.5-foot python on my shoulders, and I was kind of worried at first, but you know what? The snake just relaxed there. He just chilled out. And so what's interesting, Josh, is that after doing that and just having a 7.5-foot python on me and him just sort of relaxing and seeing these kids playing with these snakes. And
kids there playing with the snakes.
Little kids, real small little kids, 7, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds playing with these snakes, and the snakes are just relaxing. So it made me think about how much of what you're afraid of is substantial versus maybe something that you've read or seen but haven't tested for yourself. So, the proof's in the pudding. I mean, I put a python on me and he just relaxed and sat there. And so I would say maybe there's still a little bit of the fear there, but in general, I feel a lot more comfortable with snakes after meeting Steve and handling these snakes for, a few hours.
Well, tell me, so we see you started the story by hearing this gentleman rescued a python out of an SUV in Omro, decide to go talk to him, and you have this incredible backstory on what developed throughout the conversation with him. I mean, there's so many things, I'm sure, but what kind of happened during that progression of the conversation that was unexpected?
Well, Steve is he's very convincing. He's very knowledgeable, and like they say, knowledge is power. He told me a lot of things about snakes. He put things in a way that I hadn't thought about before. And again, the proof's in the pudding. I mean, he brought these snakes out that you think of as being dangerous animals, and as soon as like I said, the proof's in the pudding. If you put a snake on you and he just sits there and relaxes, and Steve tells you, hey, snakes don't really attack unless they're hungry, and as long as the snake is well fed, they're not going to do that. I'm like, you know what? He's right. So wow. I would say Steve says he's been very successful at eliminating people's fears of snakes, and he's very convincing. So if you haven't seen the story, you definitely got to see it. It's on our website, wearegreenbay.com.
And one last question. What should, in your opinion, after going through all of this, I mean, this is an incredible story. What do you want the viewers to take away from it after watching this story, after seeing the full thing?
Well, I think similar to me, I think that you need to face your fears, and for me, snakes have been, I would say, my #1 fear, and maybe there's still a little bit of hesitancy in me, but I feel much more comfortable after talking with Steve, meeting him, learning about a little bit more about snakes, carrying the snakes and holding the snakes. And so I think you see a story like this, it makes you examine your fears and how much of what you're afraid of is reasonable to be afraid of. So
it's pretty symbolic. It's not just so much of seeing the snake whisperer and seeing, confronting you holding a snake. It's just almost deeper existential type of moment
Sure.
that you have.
Sure,
Cool.
it can be very emboldening. I mean, you face your fear. If you're afraid of snakes and you hold a python and nothing bad happens, and you even, I would say, enjoy it, that might make you think a little bit deeper about what you should and shouldn't be afraid of. So
Excellent.
It's a great story. And then we also have a link in our web article if anybody wants to see Steve Keller's Traveling Snake Show.
Okay.
We've got a link to his Facebook page where they can contact him, and they can either go to his events or book their own event.
And one last thing, actually, on that note, this Traveling Snake Show. You told me in the newsroom, you were talking about if we ever wanted to have an animal show in Wisconsin, that this would be the guy?
I think Steve could have his own show. He kind of reminds me of Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter.
Sure, yeah.
I think what he does is so unique and interesting. So if anybody knows anybody Animal Planet, got to get Steve a show. It's very entertaining. I think all of us would watch it. So
Excellent. Well, thank you, Justin. Thank you guys for watching a little behind-the-scenes look and what it took to make that story. Go ahead and let us know what you thought about it. Head over to our Facebook page. Let us know in the comment section of the post, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much.
thanks, guys.
Thank you, Justin.